before the parliament to defend their budget. Among the top 5 is first the Ministry of Defense, that is backing home some 467 billions in order, according to the argument that the Minister of Defense, Mr. Betty Asomo, said to the members of the parliament. He was telling them that more and more weapons need to be purchased in order to answer to security needs, requests from the Northwest and the Southwest, plus port of crisis that is rising in the far north region, but equally in the eastern region. After the Ministry of Defense, of course, comes the Ministry of Secondary Education, headed by Dr. Nalova Lyonga, who is backing home some 338 billion francs CFA, and she says straight that some 8.8 will be used for investment, and the 379.15 billion will be used for the functionality of his department. After the Ministry of Secondary Education, we equally have the Ministry of Basic Education that backs home some 127 billion francs, and other follow suit. So, gentlemen in the studio, I want to find out from you. Let's take the first case, the Ministry of Defense, that has some 467. Ministry of Public Works, sorry. Ministry of Public Works, actually, that backs some 467 billion. He said this money was meant to construct roads and complete the stadiums. Do you see that he needed this amount of money, seeing some of the challenges that Cameroon has at this particular point? I think this question should go to Mr. Gabriel.
At the present state in which the nation is coming, we could understand the big allocation, that level of budget, that amount of budget that has been given to the Ministry of Public Works. Notice that we have in our surroundings the Chan 2021.
Yes. And we have 42 days to the beginning of the Chan.
And we have 42 days to the beginning of the Chan. We had a glissement de date. And that glissement de date came because of uncompleted work.
Yes. But that was for AFCON.
Yes, that was for AFCON. But the stadiums will still be used. They're almost the same kind of facilities that will still be used. So we can understand that this kind of a budget is allocated to the Ministry of Public Works to ensure that actually these works or anything, all preparations are taken into consideration before the beginning of the Chan 2021. But if we're talking about the construction of roads, are we saying that we're going to be able to construct those roads now in 42 days? Because we'll talk about the accessibility of the stadiums, the players, and all the rest. It doesn't seem plausible, that kind of a movement or effort that they are going on to. Now, another dimension of that budget that has been given to the Ministry of Public Works is whether actually the investment that they are going to put it into will yield its fruits. That is the question, because having events like Chan 2021, having events like AFCON and all those activities that generally brings money into the nation. So if they are allocating to ensure that these works are completed and everything is in place so that the Chan brings in finance, then this will be a good start. But there is a dimension too of that needs to be taken into consideration in order not to narrow down or downsize the positive effects that this big allocation of money could do because of the insecurity that is at it. Some people think that insecurity is only in Southwest. If people can cause insecurity in Southwest, it means that it's also an option. It's possible to cause that same insecurity in another town, especially if the people feel that causing insecurity there would make their voices being heard.
After you, Mr. Gabriel, Mr. Ate Solomon, the Kumba Manfe Road is equally projected to be taught this very budgetary year, and equally the Bamenda Babaju roads, plus the Douala Yaoundé Autoroute that has for years now been earmarked, of which only some 500 kilometers has been tarred so far. Do you foresee that all this project will be completed in 2021?
This looks like comedy to me. It looks like comedy, sincerely, because most especially the Bamenda Babaju Road. Is it the Babaju Bamenda or whatever?
It is already under construction.
It's already under construction, but I pray that it comes to an end, because this is almost like the 5th year where either the World Bank or the African Development Bank is coming in to finance the Babaju Bamenda Road, and we've never seen it coming to. And the population has been living in absolute suffering. If you say there is because I've recently, it got me annoyed to the point where I no longer, because when you look at the way the population was suffering to get to Bamenda, I'm from the northwest, but sometimes when you think about going home, just the imagination that you're going to use the Babaju Bamenda road, it's frightful. It discourages you from traveling. So, but we kept on hearing every year that the budgets have been allocated, The same thing goes with the Douala Yaoundé Auto Road. Every year we were told that budgets have been allocated for the Douala Yaoundé Auto Road. But after the same year, you go and realize that 1 kilometer has been charged. We're not serious. You go and hear that the people whose land was destroyed, and those people have not even been settled. So we should try and get serious in this country. We are looking at the African nations, because we're looking at the chant that are coming up. I wonder whether we are going to use this short period to tar the whole road that we've used about 5 years, and we've been unable to tar more than 5 kilometers. I don't know if it's just in this 2021 that is coming that we're going to just employ the magic button and then everything is going to just go full, and then the road will be tarred. Let's try to get serious with Cameroonians. We try to be realistic. We are even in a year where I keep on insisting that Cameroon is facing serious financial crisis because of the conflict where we find ourselves. And when reading the budget, we're still hearing about how we're going to purchase weapons. For Christ's sake, let us get serious in this country. We don't need weapons in this country. We need to talk to each other. We need to sit down and talk and forget that weapons solve problems. Weapons do not solve problems. The highest response to security is dialogue, social services, responding to the needs of the population. And the needs of the population includes accelerating the tarring of these roads that are very important. But unfortunately, all of these things are going to be heard on rhetoric. I bet you we're going to come here next year. This is December. We're going to come here next year, December, and we are going to be talking about budgets that have been allocated for the same roads that we're talking about.
No, we cannot wish that for Cameroon.
Well, we don't wish that, but for the past years, for the past 5 years, when they allocated budget for the Bamenda Babaju road, I think sometime last year, I shouted, I said, but this is the same road that we've been allocating budgets for. But again, we are here today, this year, we are talking about the same Babaju Bamenda road, that funds have been allocated for that. We turn around and say,
are you declining, or are you waiving all the insecurity pot that has been melted on that particular
before
junction?
Insecurity came to in the Bamenda Babaju road, how was the state of the road, and what was the reaction of the government? Did they not keep on telling us that they were going to tar the road? And if there is insecurity...
Have you not heard that contractors have been attacked on that road?
If there is insecurity, what does that tell you? That the state is losing control of its territorial integrity, and there is something that you need to do. Is not to buy more weapons, it's to talk. The government should talk.
After you, Mr. Ate, Mr. Gabriel, if ministers were respected according to their portfolio, then the Minister of Secondary Education can hit her chest, because she is moving back some 338 billion, and she says a great chunk of this money will be used to manage for her functionality. And I want to ask you, what could we possibly put into the functionality of a ministry that still have so much to do as far as education is concerned in Cameroon?
Let the question be clearer, please, Mr. Moderator. When you talk about functionality, in what aspect are you, functionality of the ministry, what exactly?
Because according to her, if she say 8.8 billion will be used for investment, we understand that one is for construction of classroom and others. And so 379.1 billion will be used for the functionality, meaning it's going to include salary, it's going to give a dotation to schools for their didactic materials. It's going to include a revision of curriculum. You want to know that the recent school year, she introduced some technical aspects, and including the agricultural technical school, and that this year they will create in Marua, Bolova, and other spotted city nationwide. Could this account for this huge budget that has been attributed, which is almost the same thing that was attributed to her last year?
Yes, that's we are having now at the helm of the Ministry of Secondary Education a very enthusiastic person. I mean, somebody whom I know from her time when she was Vice Chancellor of the University of Boya. So, depending on the activities, first thing, the Ministry of Secondary Education, in terms of the number of people that it affects directly, you can look at the large fraction of persons that, we're talking about predominantly youths. I mean, the ages from 10 years to say 18. If you look at
we
the
have
age
24,
pyramid,
25 in secondary school.
we are taking an average.
Okay.
Yes, you say 18, 19, you see that they are predominantly youths, and these are the people who will feature in the affairs of the Ministry of Secondary Education. And when you look at the section now of the teachers, we are talking about one of the largest sections of the government in terms of civil servants. So in the new projects that she has come up with could be, it's not very far from what she had before. And so we can always trust in much more budget given to the Ministry of Secondary Education. But if we're looking at it in analogy to other ministries like the Ministry of Public Works like he rightly said, the question is, we are looking at the implementation, the effect of what is actually given down. So if you go behind here, if you take the entrance in my 16, the entrance of Bulu, what we call the Bulu Road, you will see something very catastrophic.
What is that?
We are talking about a road that, in fact, the day I sat there and I was asking myself, oh my God, is this an insult to, is it an insult to somebody, to a personality, or taking people for fools? Somebody tats a road and it is going like this. It is following the rough nature, and it seems like it's an issue of mixing gravel and cement and then just come and push.
So that was based on the limited funds. You cannot
where
blame
does the
government.
Why
limited?
do we have to give
No,
limited
let me
funds?
say something.
Maybe
Where
it
does
was
the
even
limited funds come from?
Maybe it was a community initiative.
It was not a community initiative. It was not a community. No, let us call a spade a spade.
You cannot say
When this, there's what we call marché public.
Yes,
When these public works are given, what happens is that there are some few people in the manger who want to consume everything. So they will look for one or two contractors, one or two people.
Do you have proof for what you are saying?
Oh,
Mr.
please, we are
Gabriel?
doing analysis of a possible analysis of what is happening, because what could explain the kind of work that is being done in the name of government work in some places, like the examples that I've taken. It could be an issue of ganyan, and in the issue of ganyan, you begin to, if you are found with 500,000 francs to build a house for 5 million, I don't know the kind of magic you will perform. Probably you need to take some experience in Nigeria before coming. But what I'm saying is that you need to go in depth to understand where the remote cause of this work's not being completed. It doesn't only lay from my personal analysis on the budgets being given to the people. It looks there's a lot of people in the manger, and some people seems to feed well than the others, and it seems like the person who feeds less is the person to accomplish almost all the work. That is the kind of analysis I can make with the kind of terrible jobs that I've observed in terms of public works, especially in the roads, like the few examples that I cited in South.
After you, Mr. Gabriel, let's take the Ministry of Agriculture, headed by Minister Gabriel Barobe, for example, that backs back some 86 billion francs, and he says his main priority in 2021 will be to tackle hunger. to help accessibility to farm to market roads. I don't know whether that is his responsibility, but equally to buy fertilizer to help farmers association so that they can boost their productivity. How will 86 billion enable him to run all these projects?
Well, I'm not a finance expert, so I can't say how it's going to. But what we want to see is the feasibility of this, whether it is 86 billion, you said
86 billion.
86 billion. I think that it can go a long way to finance a lot of operations on the ground. But my fear is that when you look at what is happening at Ebola, there was an Ebola, was it a trade fair?
Yeah, trade fair in 2011.
In 2011.
Headed by His Excellency Mr. Paul Biya,
President Paul Biya,
the head of state.
And there were caterpillars that were bought for agriculture. And when you go to the boulevard today, those caterpillars have been abandoned.
Grasses have grown on them.
Grasses have grown on them. So I want to reserve my fear, because people say I fear, I always procrastinate the negative one. Let me try to be positive by saying that this one is going to go to do the work that has been done, because farmers really need this money, this facility. They need most of these subventions in order to carry out their activities. But what I fear is that either this money is going to get into offices and not come out, or the money will come out and then they will buy things and give to people who are not farmers.
Are you suspicious about the government?
We need to be suspicious.
It is our duty as citizens.
That is the duty of CONAC.
It is our duty. CONAC is not made of foreigners. CONAC is made of Cameroonians. And it is our civic responsibility as Cameroonians to dig deep and see that our taxpayers' money is not used to buy caterpillars.
Are you not supposed to support your government authorities?
I do support my government in different initiatives. But in as much as we have the duty towards the state, we equally have that responsibility of fact-checking. We equally have that responsibility of following up to make sure that our taxpayers' money is not used to buy caterpillars and kept in a boulevard. We are just being afraid of the same scenario. And then we want to encourage the minister that it is not enough to have this budget. It is more important to have this budget and make sure that this budget doesn't end in the pockets of people in offices, or that this budget is not used to buy materials and give to people who are not farmers, and then they end up using these materials in other things that have nothing to do with
agriculture. It's not Mr. Ake. Mr. Gabriel, the Minister of Agriculture, Mr. Gabriel Barobe, talks about tackling hunger. Where does it start? From the far north?
Mr. Gabriel Barobe?
Yes.
In namesake, that's good. But I was talking, tackling hunger. Tackling hunger from the far north? No, I don't think
I mean,
so.
where can he start? Because we know this very year, people from the west cultivating tomato cried that there was no market for their produce. And at the time when we are talking about agro-industrialization, the minister is talking about tackling hunger, and we are asking, have we been able to harness and transform our raw materials so that we can start shipping them in other parts of the country to tackle hunger there?
Well, though I'm not an agricultural specialist or an agronomist or somebody in the field, the question is, what do we have to do to tackle hunger? That is the question. And I think that at the state where Cameroon is, tackling hunger would turn around processing our foods or raw materials. If you notice very well, there is a season where, let me take from a case study in Boya, you can buy a basket of tomato for 2,000. There's another season where you can buy one for 13,000.
How do you know? Do you go to market for yourself, or?
Yes, I've had one or two things to do within the issue of buying of tomato to send somewhere. So I'm talking about something that I live in. So the question of tackling hunger is, how do we process our raw materials? We have Elena tomato, we have Parisian, we have Team tomatoes. All of these things made in China, and all of it. The question is, can't we ourselves, do sachet tomatoes? Can't we ourselves, do most of the food processing.
Even powder
I'm
tomato.
happy that the University of Boya and the Faculty of Agriculture has a department of food processing, food technology, and headed by Dr. Marjorie Meliko. I think, I believe in her enthusiasm and in her capacity to transform youths, being first of all an entrepreneurial tutor, lecturer. So she would, we hope from there that a lot will be done.
She's
so
been there for a number of times. What has she done?
No, the Department of Food Processing is just a new department of this year, but she has been under Faculty of Agriculture giving her competencies in the field of entrepreneurship. But now food processing has come up. Let me tell you, students are doing amazing things in this country. The Faculty of Agriculture, for example, has students who are doing processing plantain flour.
You should suggest them to the Minister of Agriculture.
It's not
so that some of them, this money can be put to their contributions so that they can mount an industry that will...
That's exactly what I was talking about. I was saying that this money is going to end up in the pockets of people who are not into agriculture.
That's being pessimistic. Yes,
no,
Mr. Gabriel, you are
even if we are not being pessimistic, these students of the Faculty of Agriculture of the University of Boya have already proved to the public that the entrepreneurship is possible in this nation.
Nobody knows about them. We did not know about them before you come in here.
No, I can't say yes, but the question is it only the government that is supposed to be tackled as per encouraging small and medium-sized enterprises like what we have here?
No, but
I said that this is not a call only for the government. This is a call for everybody. We have major investors. We have Cameroonians who have a lot of money. We have Cameroonians who are out who can do one or two things. So it is our general call to come together, to do, to combine our forces, all the resources we have to begin to support entrepreneurship, support startup creation, to support. That is the best way to tackle problems. So if you're talking about the hunger problem, like what the minister was talking about, the best way to tackle them is to see how to process our foods, because we have a problem of how to store them so that it carries us for over a long time. We don't have a problem in whether they are being produced. Cameroon is a very fair
or so that it can be redistributed in lacking areas, because the
rate of importation over exportation. It's an improper fashion.
Yes,
so we want it to turn back the other way, to come back to a proper fashion in such a way that we export more and import less. That is the question. And this can only be by encouraging entrepreneurship. This encouragement of entrepreneurship is not a call only to the government, but of every Cameroonian.
On that deficit of balance of international trade or budget transfer, we discover equally that Cameroon exports little, practically little, only the crude oil and maybe some iota of timber, as compared to rice. Practically everything is imported, and it is believed that our economy is like that simply because the agricultural sector has not properly been harnessed. And you are here saying that the Minister of Agriculture can put to contribution students graduate from the university, various universities, so that it can help the transformation of raw material. After that, we want to move now to the Ministry of Local Development, of Decentralization and Local Development, headed by George Elanga Obam, who has just 46 billion. And in the 46 billion, he says 3 billion will be there has been a 3 billion increase from the budget of last year, and he says he is going to use this money to set up decentralized unit of his ministry in all the 10 regions of Cameroon, and equally transfer part of the little resources to local council. Do you think this money is going to meet up the expectation of local government at a time when much talk is being made on decentralization?
I think that I don't want to be pessimistic, and like people say I'm always pessimistic. I just want to be optimistic with this one, especially with the regional elections, the council elections that are coming up. I think that is a step towards the implementation of the decentralization process. But our worry is that there are Cameroon is almost a country of conflict today. There are a lot of conflicts everywhere, and we fear that the accessibility of resources into communities might not really be effective.
Do you understand the importance of bringing delegation of this ministry again in the region when the council are there?
The implication of bringing
the delegation, like they are going to bring their denomination, their regional delegation, divisional delegation, subdivisional delegation. Meanwhile, it is a ministry that was brought up to supervise the local councils.
Well, that's actually the problem with Cameroon. There is a lot of duplication and a lot of double functioning. But let us hope that things are going to change in the near future. Let us hope that the acceleration of the decentralization process is going to be effective, even though there are already a lot of loopholes that are being identified. Let us hope that that is going to be handled in the near future. We've seen where the government delegates are coming in to play the role of mayors in some localities, whereas these mayors are supposed to be given a free hand to carry out their work, but it's not the case. But let us keep hoping that there's going to be room for improvement. As far as the localization of budget is concerned, my problem is accessibility to communities that are almost inaccessible today due to insecurity. What we should be doing is thinking of how we could bring to stability some of those areas, because it's not just the northwest and southwest regions that are inaccessible. We are talking about a situation in the far north region today that is practically inaccessible. We're talking about a movement that is being created in the far north. I think in the north, I think that we're going to talk about that movement. Every day that goes by, insecurity keeps on rising, and there's a lot of tension in our communities. It makes it difficult for local administrators to access these communities. So it's not just about voting that budget, it's about seeing how that budget is going to reach communities and effectively do the work. You just made mention about the Baba Jubamenda Road. You made mention of insecurity, that because of insecurity, the road has not been tied, even though I want to see that as an excuse. But you may formally want to look at it like, but how is it possible that these resources that we are voting are going to take effect in our different communities? Maybe it is just because people need to defend budgets. Things we can't do without defending budgets. We just have to defend the defense.
And Mr. Gabriel, the Ministry of Labour and Social Security could only back some 5.4 billion, which had an increment of 2.4% from last year. And they say they are going to create a local bank and facilitate a universal coverage for all workers. They equally say that they were going to reinforce the inspection of labor. We have recently seen retired personnel of the government, of the state, of CDC on the street marching to ask for their retirement benefits. And when this little amount is attributed to this department, how functional, how effective will it be to take care of all the grievances that is spotted here and there from ex-workers, or should I say retired personnel?
The retirement benefits, it's not something that is drawn from a budget to give to the people. I mean, they call it l'argent du contribuable. So, I mean, not like, l'argent du contribuable in terms of the workers. Something that is being cut as you're working, being a civil servant. So the people who will be taking care of that will be CMPS. So I think at the head of it we have Mekulu. So those are the people who handle in terms of retirement benefits. So it's not something that it comes from the budget, but maybe how, the different functions that needs to be put in place to handle those things. Maybe that's when now the budget comes in place. But the budget is not to be taken and then be given pensions to people.
Just that we have had situation when retired workers, when they go on the street, it is the Ministry of Labour and Social Security that has been pointed, and in order to temporarily withhold the situation, he will have to request some money and give to those who have grievances, while waiting that the appropriate quarters should answer. And we are asking Mr. Gabriel, how effective can their intervention be?
Well, their intervention from the little observations I've made or from the history of such indignations being expressed by civil workers, retired civil servants, have always, have been positive for some time. No, but understand that it is under the Ministry of Labor and Social Security. It is the ministry duty to ensure that every worker it's been taken, it's been followed up, is treated properly, receives his or her pensions and so. But there is a different whole section controlling actually the finance, as in who has to receive what during which month, and all those things, and that is under what
we understand that, but it's based on the policies put in place by the Ministry of Labor and Social Security. The social security aspect of it, Mr. Ati Solomon, is practically missing. When we see there is a minimum paid wage rate for every worker, but it's not respected in so many countries, in so many workplaces, especially in the private sector. Yeah. We still have people who back as minimum as 15,000 francs per month. Yeah. Can we expect that in 2021 the minister is going to plunge in with these resources that has seen an increment of 2.4% in 2021?
I think that the problem in Cameroon is that there are a lot of fine policies, but at the level of implementation is really a very big problem. And even when you talk about budget allocation, you may want to think about how the layman is going to benefit from all of this. In terms of labor and social security, the top guys benefit a lot from it, but
who are the top guys?
The top guys, you know them. I don't call the names. But when you go down to the local, especially in at the private sector and almost the informal sector, you realize that the wage rate is still very, very low. People earn wage rates that don't really take them home per se, and it becomes very difficult. We even talk about 15,000. There are some cases where people even earn 10,000, and then it's not even every month that they pay them. So you find it very difficult to imagine how somebody will be living on that kind of amount of money. How much is house rent? How much is electricity? And how much is that? So,
is it civil society where there's a lot of volunteerism?
Well, I come from the civil society where there's a lot of volunteerism, but I want to look at volunteerism in the civil society as a form of apprenticeship.
Okay.
Yeah, I look at volunteerism in civil society.
So, giving 10,000 could be a blessing.
Yeah, as an apprentice, sometimes it helps you to pay transportation. I've worked in the informal sector. I've tested all the sectors, the informal and the formal sector. I've been an apprentice in the informal sector, and we did not even have that opportunity to be given that. Now, as a volunteer in the civil society, I've equally passed through stages where my wage rate was very, very low. But I don't want to bring down anybody's image. I want to consider that as a learning process, because it actually permitted me to learn a lot. But somebody who has already learned and is an expert in the field, you need to compensate that person. You need to pay that person according to the person's output. And so when you go deeply and you begin to verify in some of these private sectors, it is not done. And now what the ministry should be doing is putting mechanisms that verify that all of these things are being put in place, that people don't earn 10,000 francs, whereas their house rent is supposed to be 20,000 francs. These are some of those things that the ministry should not just have them in law or as policy, but they should make sure that these policies are being implemented.
After that, Mr. Ati Solomon will take the second and our last topic of the day that talks about former Prime Minister Yan Philemon Yan that was seen in a recent video in Bamenda, Northwest.